Have you ever wondered why the Middle East, the cradle of 3 major religions and countless ancient civilizations, has been a land marked by war, division, and sorrow for thousands of years? Why the descendants of the same forefather, Abraham, continue to face each other in blood and tears? The answer does not lie in politics or headlines, but deep within an ancient prophecy, a word spoken in the wilderness, between despair and divine mercy, the prophecy of 2 sons, Ishmael and Isaac. In today's video, we will explore the spiritual origins behind the conflicts shaping the modern Middle East through the lens of the Bible, history, and the Gospel's hope of reconciliation. If these questions stir something within you, hit that subscribe button and stay until the end, because you're about to witness one of the oldest prophecies known to mankind, still unfolding in our world today. To truly understand the deep-rooted causes of the ongoing conflict in the Middle East, we must turn back the clock not just a few centuries, but thousands of years, to a time of nomadic tribes, sacred promises, and a forgotten life in the wilderness. Hagar. She was not a princess, nor a celebrated heroine in ancient epics. Hagar was simply a servant, an Egyptian maid in the household of Abram and Sarai, who would later become Abraham and Sarah, central figures in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. In her sorrow over infertility, Sarah chose a culturally accepted solution of the time. She gave Hagar to her husband as a surrogate. Hagar became pregnant, but instead of joy, this ignited jealousy, resentment, and heartache. Sarah treated Hagar harshly, and the desperate maid fled into the wilderness. In that desolate, lifeless place where all hope seemed lost, something supernatural occurred. An angel of the Lord appeared to Hagar by a spring. Not only did the angel comfort her, but also delivered a thunderous prophecy. You are now pregnant and will give birth to a son. You shall name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard of your misery. He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. And he will live in hostility toward all his brothers. Genesis 16:11-12. Pause for a moment and reflect on the weight of this prophecy. A wild donkey of a man in ancient culture. This was not only an image of freedom and independence, but also of stubbornness, defiance, and an untamable spirit. A wild donkey did not live in herds. It could not be domesticated. It was a symbol of rebellion against all forms of control. And this prophecy wasn't merely about Ishmael as an individual. It foretold the fate of an entire lineage, a people destined to live in tension, conflict, and estrangement with their brothers. And who are those brothers? None other than Isaac and his descendants, the Israelites, the children of promise, those who inherited God's covenant through Abraham and Sarah. From that moment forward, human history entered a new chapter. What started as a family story became the division of 2 nations, one born of covenant, the other born of pain and exile. But what's crucial here is this: Though Ishmael was not the heir of the promise, God never abandoned him. In fact, God reaffirmed his word to Abraham that Ishmael, too, would become the father of a great and powerful nation. And here we begin to see the sacred paradox, a prophecy that is both a blessing and a warning. Ishmael would not be forgotten. Yet he would live in conflict. His descendants would endure. Yet peace would not come easily. From the wilderness, a great destiny was spoken, and the story of the modern Middle East began. But the real tragedy lies not only in the division of 2 mothers and 2 sons. It lies in how one child, Ishmael, would always live in the shadow of the chosen one. When Isaac was finally born according to the divine promise, in Sarah and Abraham's old age, Ishmael, though the firstborn, became sidelined. God said clearly to Abraham, "It is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned." Genesis 21:12. And that was the moment when the fracture between the 2 bloodlines became permanent. At God's command, Abraham, though filled with sorrow, sent Hagar and Ishmael away from the camp to live a separate life. But what mattered most was this: God did not abandon them. In the desert, when the water skin was empty and death seemed near, God opened Hagar's eyes to see a well, and once again, he promised that her son would become the father of a great nation. The division between Isaac and Ishmael was not just a physical separation, it was a spiritual split of the covenant. Isaac was the heir to the promise, the bloodline through which the nation of Israel would come, ultimately leading to the arrival of the Messiah, Jesus Christ. According to Christian belief, Ishmael, although blessed to become a great nation, did not carry the covenant, and that has become the root of centuries of rivalry, etched into the collective memory of millions. But what's truly worth reflecting on is not just the historical narrative, it's the message of identity and destiny. Ishmael represents those pushed outside the center of the promise, those deemed other, outsiders, and yet still part of God's grand design. He was not cursed. On the contrary, he was blessed, born from mercy, and protected in the wilderness. From him came 12 princes, the ancestors of the powerful Arab tribes that would stretch across the Arabian Peninsula and the greater Middle East. The issue is this: the difference in destiny between Isaac and Ishmael became deeply embedded in the national consciousness of both lineages. One side was taught that they were the chosen people, the rightful heirs to the promised land. The other, though also descendants of Abraham, lived with the feeling of being cast aside, outside the boundaries of divine inheritance, and from this, history began to record disputes, bitterness, and bloodshed, not merely because of differences, but due to a struggle for identity, for recognition, for the right to belong to a promise. The story of Isaac and Ishmael, if viewed only through human eyes, seems like a family tragedy, a conflict between 2 sons. But with eyes of faith, we see something deeper. This is part of a divine plan, a test of humanity. a call to trust in the justice and mercy of God. God is not biased toward one side, but he does have a unique purpose for each. Indeed, Ishmael had 12 sons, the princes of great tribes, as recorded in Genesis 25. These are the names of the sons of Ishmael, 12 tribal rulers according to their clans. They became the ancestors of many ancient Arab peoples, scattered across the deserts from Egypt to Persia. The descendants of Ishmael, through history, grew into vibrant communities, strong, proud, and fiercely independent. They lived like the wild donkey prophesied, unyielding to empires, resistant to foreign domination. Their societies were built on tribal honor and kinship, where loyalty and land were sacred. However, along with their pride and strong identity, the prophecy was also fulfilled in a painful way. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. Not only did they clash with the descendants of Isaac, but internal conflicts and power struggles among Arab tribes also became frequent. They fought over territory, water, honor, and tribal leadership, a cycle that repeated through generations, a legacy of both blessing and burden. In the 7th century AD, from within this tribal world, a new voice emerged: Islam, according to Islamic belief. The Prophet Muhammad, a direct descendant of Ishmael, received revelation from Allah through the angel Gabriel. This new faith not only brought a spiritual system, but also united the scattered tribes across Arabia into an unprecedented force. They were no longer fragmented clans, but a powerful movement, spreading the faith and fire of Islam throughout the Middle East, North Africa, and parts of Europe. In just a few decades, the Arab world transformed from nomadic deserts to cultural, intellectual, commercial, and military centers. Yet, this rapid rise did not erase the deep fractures passed down from their forefathers, even within Islam. Division continued now between its two major sects, Sunni and Shia. Though this split originated in the dispute over leadership after Muhammad's death, at its heart, it still echoes that ancient tragedy. Who is truly chosen? Who is worthy to lead? Who inherits the mantle of guidance from that point on? Conflicts continued not only between Jews and Arabs, but also among Muslim nations themselves. The Iran-Iraq War, the Syrian Civil War, the conflict in Yemen, the tensions in Lebanon, and the rivalry between Saudi Arabia and Iran all bear the mark of an ancient prophecy. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him, and he will live in hostility toward all his brothers. And while Isaac, through his lineage, would establish the nation of Israel and usher in the coming of the Messiah, Jesus Christ, Ishmael, though he did not carry the covenant, became the father of numerous proud and populous nations, continuing to play a central role in both religious and geopolitical history. From a boy cast out of the camp to the forefather of millions across the Islamic world, Ishmael became a pivotal figure in the ongoing dialogue between faith, history, and identity. That prophecy spoken long ago in the wilderness, seemingly small and personal, turned out to be a prophetic map for the very world we live in today. Thousands of years after Ishmael and Isaac walked their separate paths of destiny, the world entered the 20th century, a time in which ancient prophecies seemed to find their clearest manifestation, the land of Israel. There, the struggle was no longer just over territory, but over history, identity, faith, and the right to claim a sacred promise. In 1948, after the unspeakable horrors of the Holocaust, the modern state of Israel was declared for the Jewish people. It was the rebirth of a nation after nearly 2,000 years of exile, the fulfillment of God's promise to Abraham that his descendants would return to their ancestral land. But for the Palestinians and many Arab nations, it was a tragedy. Hundreds of thousands of families were displaced, forced into exile, carrying the bitter wound of loss in their hearts. And once again, the prophecy, "His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him," echoed across time, not from tents in the desert, but through ruined streets, sirens, rockets, and the cries of children with nowhere safe to go. The Israel-Palestine conflict is not just a political struggle. It is a clash of two lineages, two sacred memories, both of whom believe they are the rightful heirs to the promised land. On one side are the descendants of Isaac, the chosen people, guardians of the covenant. On the other, the descendants of Ishmael, those who feel cast out of the promise, yet still carry Abraham's legacy in their veins. Amid walls, checkpoints, rockets, and bloodshed, one question keeps ringing. Is there a path out of this endless hostility? Could these two brothers born of the same patriarch ever forgive and walk together into a new future? The answer, according to the Christian faith, is not found in United Nations resolutions or fragile treaties. The answer is found in one person, Jesus Christ, who came not just to save a single nation, but to reconcile the entire world to God. He is the Prince of Peace, as the prophet Isaiah proclaimed. He will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Isaiah chapter 9:6. He did not come to take sides, but to tear down every wall of hostility. As the Apostle Paul wrote, "For he himself is our peace, who has made the two groups one and has destroyed the barrier, the dividing wall of hostility." Ephesians 2:14. In Jesus, the descendants of both Isaac and Ishmael can find what no weapon, no government, no international body can ever deliver: true forgiveness, deep reconciliation, and a new identity, not one based on blood or land, but on faith and grace. Jesus Christ extends his invitation to both sides, to Jews and to Arabs, not as enemies, but as children of the same Father in heaven. In him, There is no longer division between the chosen and the cast out, between the heir and the exile. Every soul is loved, every life has value, and each person is offered a chance to begin again, to step out from the shadow of prophecy and into the light of a new covenant, a covenant of love and eternal life. When we look at the Middle East today, it's hard to imagine a future without bombs, without dividing borders, without children growing up to the sound of sirens and fear. But within this seemingly hopeless historical landscape, a flicker of light still shines, a hope not born from political agendas or military strength, but from the one who once stood between enemies and said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God." Matthew 5:9. Jesus is not a vague religious symbol or a Western figurehead. He was born in this very land within the heart of Judaism, under Roman occupation, among a people crying out for deliverance. And what's astonishing is this: he did not call the Jews to take up swords, nor did he seek to overthrow an empire. He called them to forgive and to love their enemies. Jesus did not come only to save the Jews. He came to save all humanity, including the descendants of Ishmael. What the world divides: bloodlines, religion, politics, hatred. He came to restore. He is the place where both Israelis and Palestinians can kneel without fighting over land, because they have discovered a kingdom not of this world. The prophecy spoken over Ishmael was indeed a warning. His life and his descendants would be marked by conflict. But it was not an unchangeable fate. In Genesis 17:20, God said, "I will bless him and make him fruitful, and will greatly increase his numbers. He will be the father of 12 rulers, and I will make him into a great nation." That blessing still stands, but it awaits its fullness in Jesus, where the descendants of Ishmael can find the deepest satisfaction for their souls, and something miraculous is happening. In recent years, a wave of Muslims, especially across the Middle East, have reported dreams, visions, and divine revelations of Jesus. They speak of seeing him in radiant light, calling them by name, inviting them into love and forgiveness. Many have turned from the path of hatred, bravely choosing faith in Christ even at the cost of persecution, or their very lives. The love of Jesus is not based on ancestry or heritage. It transcends every border and every prejudice. In him, a descendant of Isaac and a descendant of Ishmael can look at each other not through the lens of a painful history, but through the eyes of grace, and see one another as brothers, as children of the same Father. True peace is not found in treaties between governments. True peace begins in the human heart, in the reconciliation between the soul and its Creator. And when that happens, hatred begins to dissolve. Dividing walls are torn down, and fresh rivers of love and forgiveness begin to flow through every broken heart. You may be watching this video from afar, not living in Gaza, nor in Jerusalem, but you are still part of this larger story. Because the prophecy is not only for the people of the Middle East, it is both a warning and an invitation for all of humanity. We are all wanderers in the desert of sin, and we all need a way, a truth, and a life. And Jesus is that answer. Maybe, after everything you've just heard, you're asking yourself, is there still hope for the Middle East, for the descendants of Ishmael and Isaac, and for me, someone living in a world so full of division? The answer is yes. Because that hope doesn't come from man, it comes from God. Not through guns or resolutions, but through the cross, where Jesus stretched out his arms not to condemn any lineage, but to bear the sins of both, to shed his blood not for one nation, but for all mankind. In him, there is no longer Jew or Arab, no longer the chosen and the forgotten. There are only souls being invited home to the original love of the Creator, the one who did not abandon Hagar in the wilderness, and who will never abandon you in the desert of your life. We have journeyed together from a prophecy in the desert to bloodshed in Jerusalem, to the resurrection of the Savior. And the story is still being written. And you, the one watching this video, are standing at your own crossroads in history. Will you choose to keep living in hatred, suspicion, and division? Or will you take the brave step into a future of reconciliation, forgiveness, and new life in Jesus? If what you're seeking is more than just knowledge, if you're longing for real transformation, then start with something simple. Open your heart, ask him, seek him, say to him, Lord, if you are truly the one who reconciles, then reveal yourself to me. And you will see, just like thousands across the Middle East and around the world, that he is not silent. He's still waiting for you. Thank you for staying with us until the end of this journey. If this video touched something deep within you, please subscribe. Share it with someone hungry for truth, and leave a comment below so we can pray with you. And remember, no matter how many conflicts, borders, or walls divide this world, in Jesus, there is no wall that cannot be broken down. Peace be with you, not the peace this world gives, but the peace that comes from heaven. See you in the next video.